everybody, and welcome back to The Pale Thread. I am Kat Martin, your host for this channel, and today we are going to cover a case that is most likely one of the biggest fears in mostly women's lives, but also men's. We're going to cover the case of UK's Lorraine Cox, who, after a night with friends, was followed and attacked and sadly murdered. So we've all had this fear of leaving somewhere, leaving an event with a friend, or just basically leaving anywhere and being followed. And this is exactly what her 24-year-old murderer did. So together, let's pull on this thread and see where it leads us. Lorraine Cox was a 32-year-old woman who was in a healthy relationship with her girlfriend for a bit over 2 years, I believe. They were actually even living together in Scotland. Lorraine is from Devon County in England, but she had done the long distance with her girlfriend for such a long time. They were actually fiancés, and they were now living together in Scotland, where her fiancé is from, Elise. She basically was back home for a short period of time. She missed her family, she missed her friends, so she just popped over back into the UK for a couple of months. I believe she was staying with her father, and one evening she decided to go out with her friends at a local pub. Apparently, allegedly drank quite a bit and left the bar at 2 a.m. That was the last time that Lorraine was seen by her friends, family, or loved ones. She did keep communicating within the next days with them through cell phone and social media, but that's something that we're going to cover later. So what happened was, Lorraine, when she left the bar, she was quite tipsy, and she decided to walk to her father's home. I guess she got hungry on the way there, so she stopped at a kebab shop and got something to eat, left that kebab shop, stopped at a bench, and started eating. What helps a lot in the UK is that they have these CCTV systems. So for us in Canada or in the US, there are some shops that do have some surveillance camera, but it's pretty rare. In the UK, the CCTV is really present, and you can follow someone's steps. You can see on some CCTV, of course you find that out later through the investigation, but you can see her walking, and there's someone following her from afar. Far enough for it to be either someone who's trying to be respectful and not scare her, or someone who's trying not to get detected. To me, when I saw the footage, it gave me the creeps. I am not necessarily an easy target because I'm not frail, or I don't think I look fragile or easy to attack. But I will have my guard up at all times. And I don't know if Lorraine did. In the footage, you can see her walking, but she doesn't look nervous. She doesn't, look back from what we saw, of course, because it's still spotty. But she doesn't seem too worried about it. There's almost no one in the streets. At some point, there's like a duo of people that are kind of, messing around in the street. But other than that, it's pretty deserted. Again, it's around 2 a.m. So this is all on September 1st, 2020. And so early morning, of course. And on September 2nd, Lorraine was communicating with her close ones through text and through social media. So she put a very strange post up on Facebook. She said that she was moving to Plymouth, which is about 45 minutes away from her dad's house. But everything about that is weird. First of all, she just spent an evening with her friends and never ever mentioned this. She also was not in a fight with her fiancé. She wasn't on a break with her fiancé. She wasn't about to make such a big decision without consulting Elise. So for her to be posting on social media, on Facebook, that she was moving to Plymouth, that was a huge red flag. Also, her close ones did say that the texts, although they did sound similar to words that she uses and things like that, there was still something that was off, as if her tone might have been a bit different, but they could tell that there was something off about Lorraine or that it wasn't Lorraine. Some even said that they had somewhat of like a rude undertone, the way that she was talking to them, which is unlike Lorraine. She's known to be someone that was very kind, very sweet, so it had a weird undertone. And imagine having your fiance all of a sudden send a huge announcement out on Facebook like this that she's moving somewhere, and you're having a hard time communicating with them, and then not really getting the answers that you need. Must be really frustrating. And Elise was getting frustrated. She didn't understand what was going on. And I do think that whomever was texting Elise was trying to distance Elise, trying to get her to stop texting, basically. So after a couple of days, people realized that since the bar, no one has physically seen Lorraine. So at some point, she's going back and forth through text with her dad. And mind you, she's staying at his place. And so he decides to just have a face-to-face conversation with his daughter. So he basically walks into the bedroom and notices that she's not there. And not only is she not there, but she left her insulin kit. Lorraine has type 1 diabetes and needs her insulin to basically survive. I did see that people were saying that she never went anywhere without her insulin, okay? But I know that it was a huge red flag for her father, because her father said that she didn't go anywhere. She didn't run errands without her insulin. She didn't do anything without it. But then to me, then why is it there? Why is it not with her at the bar? So what people thought was maybe she came back to her father's home and then basically left for a couple minutes and something happened in that time. But also she might have a couple kids. Like if my life depended on something, I would have 2 of them, at least. Just saying. So now on September 3rd, mind you, she left the bar in the early morning of September 1st. So now it's September 3rd, and her father decides to go to the police. So his name is Tony, and he goes to the police and tells them that his daughter is missing. And also her friends are getting more and more worried, so they're asking questions around. Even one of her really good friends texted her, and the text was with good intent, but was a bit serious in the sense that he was telling her, hey, no matter where you are, like, just tell us that you're okay, because, insulin isn't a joke and you need your stuff. So can you just tell us, like, what's up? So people were getting, emotional about the whole thing. So not only are they involving the police now, but they're putting flyers up mostly around the bar area, of course in a wider area as well, but because they're hoping that someone will, remember her from that evening and that area. So that's where they're focusing most of the flyer hanging up activity, but they're also widening up the area as well. As the investigation moves along, something kind of pops up from Lorraine's past. Lorraine was very close to testifying against a man called Robert Prout. She was about to testify against him for sexual assault. So they had to look into that guy immediately. Again, because CCTV is so prevalent in the UK, that's when they started looking into any footage that was around that area on that night. And boy, did they find a lot of things. Her friends say that the last time that they saw her was around 4th Street. So they're basically looking at a ton of camera footage around that area. So that's where they saw her walking towards her father's home and then going to the kebab shop, sitting at the bench, and then, later on being followed by a man. Like I described, it's very eerie to me. And I think she was, and I've also heard that she had drank quite a lot during that evening. And whether you want to admit it or not, you're less aware when you're kind of inebriated. So I do think that played a role into her not being super aware of her surroundings. Not victim blaming, because we've all done it. I just think that's the factor of why she's not like looking back constantly. So sadly, what you see on that footage is he gets closer and closer. The gentleman that we see on the video gets closer and closer to Lorraine as she walks. You can also see that she's not super stable on her feet. But what really stuck out to me is how he seems to be manhandling her. It could be that she's losing her footing because she's inebriated, but to me, like at some point he has his like hand, and from behind you can see that his left shoulder is kind of turned towards her as if he's holding her, basically her left arm. So they're like next to each other like this, and he's holding her like this. You could say that he's trying to not let her fall down, but it seems very controlling to me. There's also another spot on the camera where she literally looks like she's trying to pull away from him and he's not letting her. So they walk together for quite a bit and they walk back towards the kebab shop, and then we never see her again. She never exits this building. She's never seen walking out. She just vanishes. To get all of this information, they had to go through 1,100 hours of footage. So you can imagine how that would take some time. And they had a huge team working on it. It was a huge effort. And it was successful because they found out so much information. CCTV footage to me is really smart, and I don't know why we're not that equipped yet. I'm sure it would save a lot of time and a lot of taxpayer money in investigations. That 1,100 hours of footage came from 400 cameras. So I know that there was about between 200, like around 250 people actively working on this case. So it must have taken a lot of patience, but they finally got it. On that footage, not only could they track what Lorraine was doing, but they also backtracked to see what that guy was up to before he accosted Lorraine. So he left his home around 2:03 a.m. and then walked around, found Lorraine, and came back with Lorraine around 2:45 a.m. So 8 days after the actual disappearance, so 8 days after September 1st, they go to the kebab shop and they've printed out a picture from that camera footage of the man that Lorraine walked with. And the kebab shop owner says, oh yeah, that's the guy that lives upstairs. But he has very little information for him. Here, you can't rent an apartment without, background check, with, having a lot of personal information shared with the landlord. But apparently that landlord didn't really care. He knows that guy that is on the camera is the guy who lives upstairs, but he's only interacted with him once. And as far as payment goes, that guy's boss paid for the apartment, so there's no financial tracking or whatnot. But they know where he lives. So to me, that's already a really big win. He said that he doesn't have a specific name for the guy and that he moved in 5 weeks prior to this event. So he can't really help, but at least, the police can camp there until he comes back, or basically just go up and knock. And that's what they did. The guy opened the door very calmly, didn't know what was going on, and he introduced himself as Christopher Mayer. And he was very confused as to why police was there. He says that he's not the person on the picture. He understands that it looks like him, but he said, no, that's not me. And when they explain why they're there, he says, well, that it can't be me, I'm gay. And that's the reason why I'm actually here, is because I'm hiding away from my family because my family is Muslim. I don't know what tactic they used, but they got his phone and they were able to figure out that he had at some point switched up the SIM cards from one card to another, and the other card being Lorraine's phone. So of course he was arrested and questioned for kidnapping, because right now she's just a missing person. So he's being interrogated and he denies being involved in anything nefarious. But they were able to confirm that the Facebook posts and the texts that were supposedly from Lorraine were actually sent from his phone. Of course, they do a full search of his apartment and surrounding areas, and they found a ton of information. Not only was there a lot of DNA in his apartment, but also the next day they found in bins in the back alley body parts. In that alleyway, the only people who had access to those bins were either the owners of the apartments on that street, or the renters, or the businesses. But it's still a pretty big coincidence that you would find body parts. And mind you, I say body parts because it wasn't all of the body parts. The head and the torso and other small body parts were also missing. Of course, they couldn't confirm right away that it was Lorraine, but I'm sure we can all connect the dots. And of course, a DNA test was done on the remains. They did bring in 5 other people. They brought in 5 men. One was 43, the other one was 22, the other one was 30, the other one was 33, and the other one was 71 years old. And because they were all in that building, whether it be in the shop or the building itself, so they wanted to make sure that they covered everybody and they didn't, silo onto one suspect. They were all released and they were all very nice and very cooperative and all provided DNA samples which didn't match anything, so they were released. Of course, Christopher was getting a bit, nervous, started having a hard time cooperating because he was insisting that it was not him. The main reason why he started being non-cooperative was the fact that Christopher was not his real name. His real name was Azam Mangori, and he was a 24-year-old from Dartmouth Road, Stoke-on-Trent, and originally he's from Kurdistan in northern Iraq. He was currently a non-documented alien, basically, because he tried getting asylum in 2018 and it didn't work. He was refused. So now he was basically just taking an alias, working, we call it under the table here. I don't know if that's a thing. He was just non-documented. He also says that there was a part of him that didn't feel safe using his real name because his family could come for him because he was so gay. And anyways, he just decided that he was not gonna cooperate anymore. In the meantime, of course, the DNA tests were confirming that this was indeed part of Lorraine's body that was found behind his apartment. They found a ton of other DNA in his home, blood, found some ID cards of Lorraine that he had chopped up but not disposed of yet. So there's another thing too, because there's so much CCTV, they did start looking into his actions the following days. He was caught on CCTV buying, of course, a ton of suspicious things. So bin liners, cleaning supplies. He bought a suitcase, a trowel to kind of dig. He also took a bunch of taxis. He bought some really big duffel bags as well and left his apartment with duffel bags that were full. He took taxis and then came back in a taxi without the duffel bags. And that activity also only stopped a couple hours before police showed up. So he could have been caught a lot more red-handed, because when they walked in, police were like, oh, this place is neat. Before they figured out everything, they were looking at his apartment. There was no sign of struggle. It was all very clean, very neat. So it didn't look like a crime scene, But it had also been, I think, 8 or 9 days at that point. They found the taxi drivers that Azam hired, and they asked them, do you remember this gentleman? Do you remember where you took him? And they did. He took the duffel bags to Tinpit Hill. It is near Newton, Saint-Cyr. I'll put some pictures here. It's very pretty. And so that's where the police went to basically look for the rest of the remains, and that's where they found it. They found a couple of body parts that were not found, but they found the head, the torso, and a couple other things that were poorly hidden, basically in the woods. They also figured that on her torso, he had cut up a piece of her skin. I saw in some reports that it was a tattoo that was cut off, but I'm not sure. But yeah, that's great. One of the most traumatizing part of this, in my opinion, is the fact that he had shoved her t-shirt in her mouth. The coroner was not able to determine exactly the cause of death, but most likely it was suffocation from something else or the t-shirt. We're not sure. At that point, he still refuses to confess to anything. He says that he's not involved at all. But in spring 2021, the trial began. And that's where his story changed immensely. So he says that what happened that night is that he went out for a stroll at 2 a.m. and bumped into Lorraine by accident. They started talking. It turned a bit flirtatious, which is really weird because he's a self-proclaimed gay man that would never bring a woman home, and she's a lesbian. I mean, I understand that sexuality is kind of a vague concept if you want, but it's still a kind of a weird matchup if you're looking at what they're both saying and both identify as. But then he kind of changes his speech and says that he's bi. And I've seen in a couple of reports that he has in the past been in contact with escorts that are both male and female. So I do think that he is bisexual, and what he basically used as an excuse of "I would never" when police showed up is he thought, hey, like, if I say I'm gay, then there's no way I did this, you know? So on the stand, he does say that him and her walked back to his place, that he was, helping her because she was very intoxicated. He says that they started hooking up in the alleyway, and then they went upstairs. That he recorded one of their sexual interactions. I think it's just an audio that police eventually found on his phone, and he says that he recorded that in case something went wrong. I don't know about you, but I have never had an encounter that I thought I should film in case anything happened. Like, that mindset is really strange. Anyways, he recorded it. He said that they kept drinking and that Lorraine pulled out some sort of black substance in tinfoil. She heated it up and kind of smoked the fumes, and that he took some as well, made him feel ill, and he blacked out. He then says that he woke up to her in the bathroom in a puddle of her own urine, and that he freaked out, that he tried doing CPR, but he didn't really know what he was doing. He only had seen it in movies. So instead of calling for help, he said, although he was saying, I know I'm not doing it correctly, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing incorrectly to call experts. I'm going to keep trying. And then at some point, he stopped trying. He also said he saw, quote, weird creatures coming out of her mouth, and that's why he shoved the t-shirt in there. I think he was trying to sound crazy, because then also later on he says that it's liquid that he saw. Anyways, he said that he did unsuccessful CPR for a while. Also says that he didn't know the number. So I'm Canadian, and I still know that in the UK, the emergency number is 999. Here it's 911, whatever. But he's also been there for a while, so he should know what the emergency number. Anyways, he's just making excuses, let's be honest. Something else that was really damning for him is, I think it was on Snapchat, there's a video of him kind of, I think it's vaping, so there's a lot of like smoke coming out of his mouth, and he said it is because he was panicking and he needed to chill, but apparently he was listening to a very inappropriate song, like Angels Need to Die or something like that. A lot of people have said that he filmed that next to her body in his bed, but also we don't know because we can't confirm that. We weren't there. He says that the reason why he hacked into her Facebook and also why he communicated with his family is because he was afraid that people would kind of link where she was and come looking for her. But he kept, it was a very calculated murder, in my opinion. Oh my God. He did a lot of calculated things. I think he went hunting that night and he found Lorraine and he just took advantage of the fact that she was really drunk. After that, the whole connecting to her Facebook, and he said, someone asked during the trial, like, how'd you do that? He was like, it's not rocket science. No, but you have to really want to do that, to go into her Facebook, kind of figure out the password, change it or whatever. So to me, this is not he's not like a oops, she overdosed. This is very calculated, in my opinion. He kept her body for 8 days, and to me that's a very long period of time to have a body. Well, for me, for anyone, this is a really long period of time to have a body in your home. But I would have thought he would have already, if that's what he was going to do with her body, I would have thought he would have started dismembering or finding a solution earlier. I don't know. I feel like it's weird. Police said that they think he has a dismemberment fetish or kink or something, because there was some searches that were really strange on his Google. First of all, when I say it's premeditated, he went onto Google and Googled how to dig a grave. And then that was a couple nights before the actual murder. And he also had some videos of a guy with prosthetics. So he has something weird about dismemberment. He said that the reason why he said that he didn't really know what he was doing when he was dismembering her. He says that he thought he was cutting up wet tobacco, wet tobacco is a type of smokeless tobacco that is finely ground or shredded and moistened. Oh, it's also known as dipping tobacco, dip, chaw, snuff, rub, or fresh leaf. It's like when you put tobacco on your gums and you kind of spit out whatever's in your mouth. Yeah, I think that's what it is. So he says that that's what he thought he was chopping, and that's what he was also getting rid of in those bags, which is a load of bullshit if I've ever freaking heard one. Insane. Also, a couple days before the disappearance, he also looked at amputation videos online. Sometimes criminals are so dumb, and I'm happy they are because we can catch them, but God, people are weird. Also, the medical examiner said that there were absolutely no drugs in her system, which is just another proof that he's absolutely full of shit. And yeah, so she hadn't taken any drugs. She might have been very drunk, which to me is the only reason why I can see her following him. Maybe she didn't feel like she could say no or something, or didn't realize the danger she was in. I feel like he was manhandling her towards his apartment. Like I said, the trial started in spring 2021, and it lasted 5 weeks. He was accused of murder and preventing a lawful burial, which I didn't know it was a thing, but it makes a lot of sense. Everyone deserves a decent burial. He testified, he explained his story, like I said, and well, no one believed him, thankfully. After 5 hours of deliberation, he was found guilty on both counts and sentenced to, sadly, only 20 years in prison with possibility of parole after that. Mind you, he was 24 at the time of the murder, 25, I believe, at the time of the trial, which will make him 45 when he gets out, if he gets out. So I'm really, really hoping that he doesn't get paroled ever. This guy is extremely dangerous. Yeah. After all this, of course, there was a huge repercussion on Lorraine's family. Her dad has spoken up quite a lot on improving women's safety in the UK. So he's doing, example, there's a couple of things that he's doing. He is trying to raise some funds to give to charities that are focused on women's safety. He also planned a 13-mile walk that would pass in front of the bar where she spent her last evening at, because not only did she love the area, but she was also well known by everybody there and well loved, kind of to honor her last night. And the proceeds went to a charity for women. Something to note is her father, Tony, I'm not sure exactly what happened to him, but he does have a cane. So although a 13-mile walk is quite the walk for anyone, it was quite the statement for someone who has a cane and has a disability. So quite impressive, if you ask me. You can see how he is affected by the loss of his daughter. I guess every parent would be, but you can see that they had a very beautiful relationship. He has described Lorraine as the heartbeat of the family, which is absolutely adorable. He also said the following statement: "We hope and pray that no other woman or family has to go through what our beautiful girls suffered, or that any other family suffers the brutal, distressing experience we all have been through." I found an article that describes Tony's mission, basically, and it says, quote, "Tony and his family are demanding greater investment in the city's CCTV system to make sure it's fully manned. He believes every camera position should have a sign on it and a phone number to allow people to alert the control room or police." Lorraine was described as the most kind-hearted, loving, and generous girl, and again, as the heartbeat of her family. So I think everybody lost quite an important person on that day. I know that her fiancé was shattered by the events. I hope that her family can find peace, and also her loved ones, her friends that will miss her every day. And I'm very impressed with the police work. It took 10 days for the murderer to be caught. I think that's really remarkable. I hope you see me in the next video, and I hope I get to interact with you in the comments below. Until then, stay curious, stay safe.